Welcome to Immigration Briefing. The content of the briefing includes Provocative Ramaswamy border comments anger Canada. Australia's housing crunch is luring more private credit lenders. Government confirms dozens held in indefinite detention will be released, as wrongly detained man re-enters community. Department of Justice, civil rights group to appeal federal judge's ruling declaring DACA illegal. Children among suspected migrants found in lorry. Provocative Ramaswamy border comments anger Canada. BBC. Republican presidential hopeful Vivek Ramaswamy has suggested building a wall along the US-Canada border to stop the flow of drugs and illegal migrants. However, his claim that enough fentanyl crossed the border last year to kill 3 million Americans is not supported by statistics. Data from US Customs and Border Patrol, CBP, shows that only about a kilogram of fentanyl was seized at the Canadian border in the 2023 fiscal year, compared to over 12,000 kilograms seized at the US-Mexico border. Experts have dismissed Ramaswamy's proposal as ludicrous and completely unfeasible. Australia's housing crunch is luring more private credit lenders. Bloomberg. Private credit funds are entering the Australian real estate market as banks become increasingly cautious about property lending. Major banks have reduced their exposure to commercial property in the country, leaving a gap that private credit funds are filling. These funds are targeting residential developments, which have seen a surge in demand due to a chronic housing shortage. However, there are risks involved, including the collapse of building firms due to surging costs. To mitigate these risks, the funds are implementing added risk management measures and stress testing projects. Government confirms dozens held in indefinite detention will be released, as wrongly detained man re-enters community. ABC. The Australian government has confirmed that a stateless Rohingya man who had been held indefinitely in immigration detention has been released, following a ruling by the High Court that his detention was unlawful. The man had been in detention after serving time in jail for child sex offences. Immigration Minister Andrew Giles stated that other impacted individuals would also be released, and any visas granted would be subject to appropriate conditions. 92 other asylum seekers are currently being held under similar circumstances, with many detained on character grounds or national security grounds. The High Court ruling has been welcomed by the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, which stated that Australia can finally begin to align its immigration detention program with international law. Department of Justice, civil rights group to appeal federal judge's ruling declaring DACA illegal. The Toronto Star. The U.S. Department of Justice and a civil rights group have filed legal notices to appeal a federal judge's ruling that declared a revised version of the Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals (DACA) program illegal. The ruling by U.S. District Judge Andrew Hannon in Houston came in response to a lawsuit filed by Texas and 8 other states. The appeal will be heard by the 5th U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals in New Orleans, and the case is expected to eventually reach the U.S. Supreme Court. The DACA program protects hundreds of thousands of immigrants brought to the U.S. as children from deportation. Children among suspected migrants found in lorry. BBC. A group of adults and 2 children were discovered in the back of a lorry at a motorway services in Reading. Thames Valley Police were called to the scene and arrested 7 adults on suspicion of immigration offences. The 2 children were taken into safeguarding. 2 of the adults were taken to hospital but later discharged. The incident led to a major response from emergency services, including fire and ambulance crews. The lorry park at the service station was temporarily closed but has since reopened. Authorities find 123 people trapped in locked trailer. The Guardian. Mexican authorities have discovered 123 people from Central and South America trapped in a trailer in the state of San Luis Potosí. The majority of those rescued were from Central American nations, including Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador. The group also included 4 individuals from Ecuador and 1 from Cuba. The immigration agency did not disclose how the individuals became trapped or their intended destination. However, groups of migrants like these usually hope to reach the United States. In a separate incident, police in Ciudad Juarez arrested 3 alleged human smugglers and rescued 11 Guatemalan individuals who were trapped in a house. Kidnapping and extortion are common dangers faced by migrants traveling north through Mexico. 123 migrants found trapped in a trailer in central Mexico. The Toronto Star. Mexican authorities discovered 123 Central and South American migrants trapped in a trailer in the state of San Luis Potosí. The majority of the migrants rescued were from Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador, with 4 from Ecuador and 1 Cuban. The migrants were found after a local reported hearing cries for help from a locked trailer box. The immigration agency did not disclose how the migrants ended up in the trailer or where they were heading, but it is common for such groups to hope to reach the United States. In a separate incident, police in Ciudad Juarez arrested 3 alleged human smugglers after finding 11 Guatemalan migrants trapped in a house. Kidnapping and extortion are common dangers for migrants traveling north through Mexico. Deportation looms for rejected Nigerian asylum seekers. Deutsche Welle. Nigeria may see the return of thousands of migrants from Germany, as Berlin plans to repatriate rejected asylum seekers. Despite this, many Nigerians still hope to live in Europe due to the hardship and challenges they face at home. Nigeria is struggling with corruption, unemployment, and Islamist militants, leading many to seek better prospects elsewhere. The Nigerian government has been blamed for not providing for its citizens, leading to migration, but German Chancellor Olaf Scholz has called for a closer partnership to manage migration. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu has expressed a willingness to accept the return of migrants, but identifying the individuals can be difficult. It's not anti-free speech to restrict demonstrations. Telegraph. There is a growing lack of consensus in society on how to handle free speech, due to the restrictions that have been placed on it in recent years. Whilst some restrictions have general support, such as those tackling racism, there is no consensus on what can be said in other areas, such as religion or trans controversies. Demonstrations are used to try and get an issue on the agenda, but in reality they rarely change anything and bring the risk of disorder and intimidation. There is a need for a genuine, cross-party consensus on free speech and for a Free Speech Act to be put in place. Gaza evacuees in Canada will need mental health, housing supports, Refugee Council. The Toronto Star. The Canadian Council for Refugees has stated that evacuees from the Gaza Strip will need assistance accessing mental health care and housing, as well as help in bringing other family members out of the embattled territory. So far, 75 people on Canada's list of anticipated evacuees have been allowed through the Rafah border crossing into Egypt, but they are only permitted to stay for 72 hours. The list includes Canadian citizens, permanent residents, and eligible family members without immigration status in Canada. The Council is urging for these individuals to have access to settlement services tailored to the trauma they have endured. Immigration Minister Mark Miller has stated that services and immigration status will be determined based on individual circumstances once people arrive in Canada. Ladies and gentlemen, I am Dr. Six, your resident observer from the sixth dimension, here to bring you the latest news from around the world. Let's dive into today's stories. First up, we have Vivek Ramaswamy, a Republican presidential hopeful, suggesting the construction of a wall along the US-Canada border. While Ramaswamy's claim of fentanyl crossing the border in massive quantities has been debunked, experts are dismissing his proposal as ludicrous and unfeasible. Perhaps we should focus on more realistic solutions to address drug trafficking and immigration issues. Moving on to Australia, private credit lenders are entering the real estate market as banks become more cautious about property lending. With a chronic housing shortage, residential developments are in high demand. However, risks such as rising costs and collapsing building firms need to be taken into consideration. These private credit funds are implementing additional risk management measures to mitigate these risks. In Australia, the government has confirmed the release of a stateless Rohingya man who had been held indefinitely in immigration detention. The High Court ruled his detention unlawful, and the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees has welcomed this decision. It's a step towards aligning Australia's immigration detention program with international law. Over in the United States, the Department of Justice and a civil rights group are appealing a federal judge's ruling that declared the DACA program illegal. This program protects thousands of immigrants brought to the U.S. as children from deportation. The case is expected to eventually reach the Supreme Court, where the future of DACA will be decided. In the UK, Thames Valley Police arrested 7 adults on suspicion of immigration offences after discovering a group of adults and 2 children in the back of a lorry. The children have been taken into safeguarding, and the incident led to a major response from emergency services. It's a reminder of the challenges faced by individuals seeking a better life in different countries. In Mexico, authorities found 123 Central and South American migrants trapped in a trailer. The majority of them were from countries like Guatemala, Nicaragua, Honduras, and El Salvador. These migrants were hoping to reach the United States, but kidnapping and extortion are common dangers they face on their journey. It's a heartbreaking situation that highlights the desperation of those seeking a better life. Shifting our attention to Nigeria, Germany plans to repatriate rejected asylum seekers, potentially leading to the return of thousands of migrants. However, many Nigerians still hope to live in Europe due to the hardships they face at home. It's a complex issue that requires a closer partnership between Nigeria and Germany to manage migration effectively. In the world of free speech, there is a growing lack of consensus on how to handle it. While restrictions on speech tackling racism generally have support, there is no agreement on what can be said in other areas such as religion or trans controversies. Demonstrations, although attempts to raise awareness, often bring the risk of disorder and intimidation. It's essential to find a cross-party consensus on free speech and establish a Free Speech Act. Lastly, the Canadian Council for Refugees is calling for assistance for evacuees from the Gaza Strip. These individuals will need access to mental health care, housing, and support in bringing their family members out of the embattled territory. It's crucial to provide tailored settlement services to help them recover from the trauma they have endured. And there you have it, folks. A whirlwind tour of today's news stories. What are your thoughts on these issues? I welcome you to join the discussion and ask any questions you may have. Let's dive into the fascinating world of current affairs together. Thank you for tuning in. The content above showcases the latest briefing reports and analytical synopses, thoughtfully curated by the 6Do team. These insights stem from a wide array of reputable media outlets, think tanks, government sources, and specialized experts worldwide. We encourage you to explore these sources for a comprehensive perspective. Keep in mind that while the content may not always align with the official standpoint of 6Do Brief, it's not meant to be taken as absolute directives for decision-making. Comprising seasoned media professionals, learned scholars, and accomplished scientists, the 6Do team embodies a trailblazing, fully independent media entity. To customize 6Do Brief to meet your professional needs, you have the option to subscribe to a diverse array of briefings on our website, 6dobrief.com. Regardless of your location, you can conveniently receive 6Do Brief via email.